All right, so we're doing the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, the chapter, the Master and the Brahmo Devotees, and we're on page 161 to start tonight. And last week, just in closing, Thakur reminded us that we're here to eat mangoes and not to count the leaves. Which I think, if you really dwell on that for a few minutes, it's a beautiful little bit of permission that we have, that we're here to enjoy God. We're not here just to learn about God, to collect philosophies and ideas and good quotes. We are here to enjoy the beloved, the divine. And, that joy is one of the fruits of the divine spirit. It's one of the things in your nature. And so to walk with the divine is to be at peace with yourself, and to be at peace with yourself is to have a great joy available to you, a great contentment, when nothing inside of you condemns you for anything, when nothing inside of you accuses you, when nothing inside of you knows a secret that you keep from everyone else. To be just pure and free and open is the way to peace. And that's the reason, aside from hypocrisy being gross, it's also a blocker of internal happiness. It's funny because the mind is put together that way. It's why we know that we carry the karma within our own mind, because we don't give ourselves permission to be free if we're not free, right? The mind holds us accountable. The mind keeps that little itch in the back when it knows you're being hypocritical, or when you're being pretentious or something. That little tickle at the back of the mind is there that prevents the satisfaction from spreading, from being full, from you being totally content. All right, so here it is. We are on what day here? We're in December of 1882. It was an early hour of the morning, around 2 or 3 o'clock. All right. Do you know what time the monks get up at Bellarmont every morning? 3:30. Yeah. Well, the slow ones get up at 3. Those quick ones who can get themselves cleaned up and wrapped in a dhoti in a half an hour get up at 3:30. And
how many hours do they sleep?
Probably 4, maybe 5. In the night, but of course that's cheating a little bit, because they also take a nice nap every afternoon from like 2 to 4, so something like that. So when it gets hot, they go to bed. I remember when I first got there, I decided, I don't take naps. I don't do naps. And once I got there and realized that there's no one else that's up and around. There's nothing else to do. The temple's closed. All the stores are closed. All the senior swamis are in their rooms taking their nap. So unless you just kind of want to walk around, twiddling your thumbs and counting birds, there's nothing to do. So ultimately, everybody goes to bed. All right. So they're up at this hour, 2 or 3 in the morning. Unbelievable. I don't even call that morning. So they're up in the middle of the night. The room was dark. Sri Ramakrishna was seated on his bed and now and then conversed with the devotees. The master: remember that daya, compassion, and maya, attachment, are 2 very different things. Attachment means the feeling of mindness towards one's relatives, or toward anything. That attachment means you've identified with it. It's yours. It's got your name or you written on it somehow, some way. And it can be anything. It doesn't even have to be an object. It can just be thoughts or ideas that you identified with. So those things, that's contrary to daya, to compassion. Mindness is the destroyer of compassion. Mindness is actually the thing that causes probably the root of almost all trouble in this world, me and mine. Thakur says that if it weren't for lust and greed, that none of this would be going on. The world would have long ago realized its nature and disappeared. mother added me and mineness and lust and greed. And she laughed. She said in the beginning, people were realizing God so quickly, they were not even living out a full life. And the creation was in danger of not continuing. And so she sprinkled in a little bit of lust and greed, and she claps her hands and laughs and says, and it's been going on with a great gusto ever since. So it's quite a wonderful meditation to think about what that means, that lust and greed is the root of everything that we see. You learn a lot about ourselves and why it's so important to overcome those, because that lust gives birth to beauty and ugliness, fat and thin, rich and poor. All the judgments that we make about people are because of lust, right? Because of lust. And the reason that there's not enough food in the world, even though there's plenty of food in the world, is because of greed. You've got people that sit on mountains of cash and food, and other people who can't get a single meal. And they sometimes live across the street from each other. And so this me and mine, lust and greed, is a great danger, and is at the root of everything that we suffer from. Attachment means the feeling of mindness toward one's relatives. It is the love one feels for one's parents, one's brother, one's sister, one's wife and children. And that's important there, because it's still love. It's still the manifestation of God, but it's going through a selfishness filter. It's going through a mind that's attached to itself or to the body. And that attachment is what causes it to come. The love, the equanimous, free-flowing love that comes in the back of you goes through the mind, the filter, with an ego in it, and it takes that universal love and makes it a particular love that's an advantage to the ego itself. And so this is why that no mind is such an important practice, because that ego takes birth in the mind by using the past, and then it watches the present in order to find discontent, right? In order to produce discontent, because the present doesn't contain all of your attachments. And so it will constantly remind you of which attachments are missing from the moment in order to get you distracted and under its control, under the control of desire, so that you then go and play the donkey, and to bring your master, the ego, whatever it's wanting in the particular moment. Compassion, in contrast to Maya, is the love that one feels for all beings of the world. It is an attitude of equality. If you see anywhere an instance of compassion, as in Vidyasagar, know that it is due to the grace of God, right? How would the grace of God do that? To create this compassion, this equality, right? It does it because of what? What does grace require? Requires of you humility. It requires you to understand that without grace, you can do nothing. You can just sit there and tread water. That nothing is possible without God's grace, and that's the great equalizer. That when it comes down to it, God alone is real. All the rest of us are players on the set, and all of us are moved by the grace of God, by the love of God. And so coming to know that, we teach grace. We live in grace. We're gracious. He who has been forgiven much loves much, right? We know that from one of the sayings of Jesus. He who has been forgiven much loves much. And so grace is that. And grace is that. And grace is what equalizes our love for all by giving us the inspiration to be forgiving for all, to not hold people's faults in our mind, but to understand that all of it is dissolved in the same grace, right? Through compassion, one serves all beings. Maya also comes from God. Through Maya, God makes one serve one's relatives. But one thing should be remembered. Maya keeps us in ignorance and entangles us in the world, whereas Daya makes our hearts pure and gradually unties our bonds. right? So this equanimous feature, compassion, coming through grace, is what purifies the heart. And so, in a sense, Daya, compassion, comes through awareness, comes through an awareness of your own mind, an awareness of your own body, an awareness of your relationship with those, and through the grace that has allowed you to separate and to discern and to renounce. That grace is what you then have left to pass around. That sweet forgiveness, that kindness, that finding no fault with others. God cannot be realized without purity of heart. Thakur says, so this purity of heart, we always talk about that. What is it? It's the removal of me and mine. It's getting rid of that ego self. If you have no me and mine, you have no vice. If you have no me and mine, you have nowhere for the ego to hang its armor. Right? There's just the divine, and you in that awareness of the divine, just enjoying the presence of the beloved, watching all of this happen. Because when it's seen from its true vantage point, you know that there's no way for anybody to get hurt, and nothing to actually happen to anybody. It's like dreaming a dream and knowing that it's a dream. You can watch all of the action and not be afraid. You can just enjoy it, enjoy the show, because you know everybody's safe. That's why, like watching TV. As long as Godzilla's in the television, it's very entertaining. If by chance you're watching him out the window, that's a very different scenario. You see, so one is attachment and one is detachment. If you're watching it on television, that's detachment. That's because you know that it has nothing to do with you, yet you're safe, that it's separate from you, and that there's no danger. Watching Godzilla out the window is attachment. Suddenly, this is your house, and you can see Godzilla from the window. Oh my God, I'm not safe. My house is not safe. My car is not safe. My neighbors aren't safe. Does anybody know where the children are? So me and mine is what wakes us up to suffering. So he's drawing this very clearly here for us. God cannot be realized without this purity of heart, without this letting go of ego, without finding a way to love everybody equally. One receives the grace of God by subduing the passions, lust, anger, and greed, right? And those things are reduced through awareness. But once you become aware of what these things actually are, and once you become aware of what they are actually doing to your life, and when you become aware of what they are actually blocking you from, you let go of them quickly. You're like, oh my God, how have I been grabbing onto all these things for so long? And the problem is that we have been doing it for so long, and it's become habitual. And habits are difficult to break. Reason alone can't break a habit. You can sit there and know what you're doing is hurting you. Every addict in the world does that. Every addict in the world knows that the substance they're picking up is going to give them a few seconds of joy, of bliss, but they also know that it's destroyed their life. And so this habit is what has to be renounced. When it comes down to pure habit, that's the time for renunciation. It takes that self-control. But you won't be able to do that without the discernment until you come to realize this really isn't what I'm looking for. This isn't serving me in the way that I'm fooled into thinking it does. This is hurting me more than it's helping me. When you come to that realization through discernment, then the habit must be broken through renunciation. And that renunciation, that process is given fuel by grace, because it's knowing the unconditioned love of God for you. It's knowing that love that the divine has for you that allows you to get up 1,000 times in a row without looking like a fool. That allows you to get up and try again without looking like a fool. I did that love verse from 1 Corinthians yesterday in my vlog last night. And that's such an important thing to really drive into your heart and into your mind, that this unconditioned love always hopes, always believes, always trusts, never fails. That's the quality of the divine awareness within you. And for you to accept that is what gives you the strength to let yourself stand up and try again instead of hiding. Because our faults make us want to escape. They make us want to be distracted. So if you look, that's the only thing that Maya can offer you is distraction, a distraction from your problems. And if you don't know what the solution is to your problems, then naturally you just want to hide from them. You look at Adam and Eve in that story. That's why the first thing that they do in the presence of God after they've eaten that blasted fruit was to hide. They heard him coming in the cool of the day and they ran and hid themselves. And that was the first thing God noticed. Why are you hiding? What an odd thing. I'm love itself. Why would you hide from me? And then he says, did you eat of the fruit of the tree? Did you eat of egoism? Did you define yourself by looking at the sense objects? And did you come to a different conclusion than the one that comes from within you, from your divine nature? That's what happened. Now you're small. Now you're in danger. Now you have to work for the rest of your days for your desires and for your fulfillment. So this is what our attachments are doing to us. This is what our vices are doing to us. And normally, if you get going on them, eventually you lose your taste for spiritual life because of that fear and because of that need for distraction of not wanting to face what you're doing or what you're being or what you're becoming. And so when you don't want to face those things, you hide from them. And then you have to get really good at hiding. You've got to have a very, very free schedule to hide as much as you want to hide. I remember those days. I remember having to be busy every single minute of my day and my evenings. I couldn't stand it when the noise stopped, right? Because there was no inner peace. There was only pain inside. Because I had all of these habits and this life that was completely contrary to my nature. But I didn't understand any of it, didn't know what the answers were, and just got pulled deeper and deeper into confusion. And then you lose sight of grace, and you lose sight of the beloved, you lose sight of your own nature. You stop believing even that there's a sense of bliss possible within you, that there's a sense of wisdom possible within you. You start even forgetting those things. And so Thakur is telling us, purity of heart is very important. Weed out that me and mine. Become a great observer of the mind and surround yourself with the grace and love of God. All right. Then one sees God. One receives the grace of God by subduing the passions, lust, anger, and greed. And then one sees God. I tried many things in order to conquer lust. When I was 10 or 11 years old and lived at Kamarpur, I first experienced samadhi. I was passing through a paddy field and I saw something and was overwhelmed. There are certain characteristics of God vision. One sees light, feels joy, and experiences the upsurge of a great current in one's chest, like the bursting of a rocket. The next day, Baburam and Ramdayal returned to Calcutta and spent the day and the night with the master. So these beautiful teachings here. Just here in one paragraph, we found out the way to freedom and have been told of that precious divine grace that gives us the permission, to have the gall to stand up and face God in our current condition, to have the chutzpah, all those great words, to have the chutzpah to stand up and expect anything from God, it would be horribly ostentatious for us to even speak to God. Here on earth, I remember I went to a theater show called The Red Dress in Soho, New York, in a warehouse down on the bay. And who wrote The Naked Civil Servant? Oh gosh, it just came and then went again. Quentin Crisp. And Quentin Crisp was sitting in the chair next to me in the theater for this show. And my friend Philip was sitting on my right, and I was like, Quentin Crisp is sitting next to me. And Quentin Crisp, I was like, should I say hi? Should I say hello to him? And Philip was like, No, no, that's tacky. Don't do that. So you see, even on our plane, we know there's some people that you can talk to and some people you can't talk to. You know, Beyonce, can't talk to Beyonce. Pat Boone, you can probably say hi. You know, we have we have these gradations, and we know there's some people you can't even approach, right? But God breaks that rule. God is always approachable. And, you know, I have this idea that I've shared before, that this gaze of the divine gaze, which sees everything in you, you know, as a matter of fact, if you meet a really holy person, when they look at you, you feel that you feel completely revealed before them, like they know and can see what's going on within you. And that is what causes our insecurity. That's what causes us to grab, to attach. It's actually the fundamental reason for attachment. Is the ego is always trying to anchor itself in reality because it has no substance to itself. So it's always trying to anchor itself. So it's grabbing, literally like a drowning person, just grabbing anything from any direction around it in order to survive, so it doesn't go under. And so I have this idea that really at the end of life, when you leave the body for the first time and you're going through that NDE, that near-death experience tunnel toward the light at the end, which is a very common story, that you're really walking in the divine gaze. That divine light at the end is love itself, is the presence of the Supreme. And as you walk toward it through this, you know, transport, as it were, that light, you know, is making visible everything in you, everything in you. And if you have learned in this life, in your practice that you did today, if you have learned the strength and the depth of grace, then you'll be able to walk directly into that light with no fear and no shame and have your ultimate realization. If at any point you're embarrassed or ashamed, you know, then you will reach to the left or to the right and grab something dear to you, something you've been attached to, in order to hide yourself from that light. And that will determine your next birth. That will determine your next entry into this world. And so it is very, very important that we have a very deep and thorough understanding of the grace of God, and that we have a wonderful knowledge of an unconditioned love that we've learned to build our life on. That's the rock. That's the unchangeable. That's what we build our life on. And if we build our life on that grace will not change. That grace will not let us down. And so it is indeed your refuge in a very real way. It is indeed your life in a very real way. It was afternoon. The master was sitting in his room at Dakshineshwar with M and one or two other devotees. Several Marwari devotees arrived and saluted the master. They requested Sri Ramakrishna to give them spiritual instruction. He smiles, right? That's one thing he could never be, was a guru. He hated it when people called him teacher. And so to go in and ask him for instruction, you know, he just sits there and smiles like, we'll see what mother does. We'll see what happens. The master to the Marwari devotees. You see, the feeling of I and mine, that is the result of ignorance. But to say, oh God, you are the doer, all this belongs to you, is a sign of knowledge. How can you say such a thing as mine? The superintendent of the garden says, this is my garden. But if he is dismissed because of some misconduct, then he does not have the courage to take away even a worthless thing like a mango wood box. Anger and lust cannot be destroyed. Turn them toward God. If you must feel desire and temptation, then desire to realize God. Feel tempted by him. Discriminate turn the passions away from worldly objects. When the elephant is about to devour a plantain tree in someone's garden, the mahout strikes it with its iron-tipped goad. You are merchants. You know how to improve your business gradually. Some of you start with a castor oil factory. After making some money at that, you open a cloth shop. In that same way, one makes progress toward God. It may be that you go into solitude now and then and devote more time to prayer. But you must remember that nothing can be achieved except in its proper time. Some persons must pass through many experiences and perform many worldly duties before they can turn their attention to God. So they have to wait a long time. If an abscess is lanced before it is soft, the result is not good. The surgeon makes the opening when it is soft and has come to a head. Once a child said to its mother, "Mother, I'm going to sleep now. Please wake me up when I feel the call of nature." "My child," said the mother, "when it is time for that, you will wake up yourself. I shan't have to wake you." The Marwari devotees gradually brought offerings of fruit and candy and other sweets for the master, but Sri Ramakrishna could hardly eat them. He would say, "They earned their money by falsehood. I can't eat their offering." He said to the Marwaris, "You see, one can't strictly adhere to truth in business. There are ups and downs in business. Nanak once said, 'I was about to eat the food of unholy people when I found it stained with blood.' A man should offer only pure things to holy men. He shouldn't give them food earned by dishonest means. God is realized by following the path of truth. One should always chant his name, even while one is performing one's duties, and mind should be left with God. Suppose I have a carbuncle on my back. I perform my duties, but the mind is drawn to the carbuncle. It is good to repeat the name of Rama. And the same Rama who was the son of King Dasaratha has created this world. Again, as spirit, he pervades all beings. He is very near to us. He is both within and without. Yes, this idea of giving things to a holy man, to your teacher, to your guru, they should only be pure things that are not me and mine oriented, right? And when you give them, you let go of them. Quite often, I found over the years in the monastery that people would come and they would bring their offering to the deity for Durga Puja or whatnot. And then they would want you to offer it in this way, and they wanted you to make sure that it's put on this plate, and they want to make sure that, no, put it over there, don't put it over there. That they practically follow their offering around through the whole process. That's not a pure offering. That offering is polluted by me and mine all over it. And for us, we don't care. We don't even notice because the whole world is going on because of me and mine. So we don't notice. But to someone who has done this work and spent their life cultivating a pure mind, those things are apparent to them, and they're very difficult for them to digest. And it also improves your awareness, right? There's that story of I can't remember her poor name again. The woman who Rangu saved me last time. The woman who made the bathing ghat, came in and hung out in the back of the room, and then came up and touched Thakur, but stung him like a scorpion.
I think her name was Bhagavati.
Bhagavati. Thank you. As my life goes on, you guys are going to have to give the lecture, and I'm just going to sit here and nod because I won't be remembering anything. Oh yeah, that's a good point. It's going to be like that before long. But Bhagavati, yeah, she came in, and she was aware initially of her state because she stayed at the back of the room. She knew that she was an impure woman, that she had lived a very immoral life. And so she came in and she stayed toward the back, and the master greets her and is very sweet to her and is asking her some questions about her practice and her spiritual life. And she has to say no to all the things, that she hasn't done any of these things. But then she remembers that she did, in fact, build a bathing ghat for the public. And there's a plaque there with her name on it. And the master praises her, says, "Oh, that's very good." And so in her pride of having done something that she credited to herself, right? Not with the idea that God is the doer. She was the doer for that. She comes forward then and touches the master's feet. And you remember that he jumps up like he's been stung by a scorpion and runs across the room to this big vat of Ganga water that's over there, is just dumping Ganga water onto his feet to stop the burning from that impurity. And of course, she's mortified. It says she looked like she had died. And the rest of the devotees are silent. Everybody's like looking at each other like, oh my God, wow, what is that? And the master comes over and tries to take away her embarrassment. He sits down next to her and begins singing this beautiful song about the treasures that lie around the heart, and tells her to dive deep to touch those treasures. So he made Bhagavati aware of the serious condition that she was in because of her attachments to me and mine, to the things of this world. And he made her aware of the pain that caused her beloved, that the one nearest and dearest to her. And in that, making her aware of that, he doesn't leave her in that shame. He then gives her the instructions on how to fix it, how to find her way back, how to come home. And so Thakur lays out these rules for giving your food to holy people so that you become aware, so that when you're preparing your offering for the temple, you'll chant the name of God. You'll use the fresh food that you purchased, particularly with God in mind when you were at the grocery store. So it's not a leftover. It's not an expired thing. It's not what you found in the cabinet. It's very important when you offer something at the temple that you bought it for that reason, that you prepared it for that reason, that you brought it to the temple for that reason. And when you leave it in the shrine in the temple, you leave it at Mother's feet and you walk away and you do not think about it again. When you've offered something, it's done. It's gone from you. It's the same way when you pray. If you pray for something, then leave it at Mother's feet. Don't come back like an idiot and pray a dozen times for the same thing. When Mother's deaf, it's like, she's not hard of hearing. She's not forgetful like I am. You leave it at her feet, and it's up to you to have the faith to leave it there, to feel like I mentioned this to Mother.
I really struggle with the topic of praying. So, we pray for a sick friend.
Okay.
And every day. So is that like what you just, we don't pray for things just once. So you were talking about just not repeating prayers. Were you talking about prayers for myself? Just not repeat for my.
Well, okay, you got me a little bit there. Yeah, if you're praying, well, it depends on why you're praying many times. What? God hears it one time. Why not pray once and leave it at his feet? And when it comes back into the mind, instead of feeling like praying again is somehow going to double your chances, just remind yourself, I've already laid that at Thakur's feet, and give Thakur a salute in your mind. I've laid this at your feet. I'm walking away from it because of faith. I think that's a better way than to go, like we're convincing God to do something, or, that somehow like that. There's nothing wrong with praying multiple times for something. It's just that I like to emphasize the idea of, if you've laid it down before Mother, what else is there to do? Does doing it multiple times make it better? It might.
As a mother-child relationship, child will nag you until you get a child will like ask for something over and over. Yes.
Right.
They don't. Yeah. I've laid it at her feet. I'm not,
Right. No, I like that. I think that would probably be, if you did it from that spirit, you might be able to bother God into doing it for you. That's a quote I'm going to deny completely. But, yeah, if you're wanting something and he's not giving it to you, there's room for everything in there. I just think it's better to ask once and to have faith that it's going to be taken care of and walk away from it. Otherwise, it's I don't know. I got funny feelings about it. Otherwise, it could be attachments. It could be a lack of surrender. It could be, forgetfulness on your part, lack of faith on your part. All those things could come into play.
Well, the prayer get overwhelming.
Yeah, it can. Yeah. No, I think I stick with my original as the general, as the idea. But I think all of us have our own relationship with the beloved. And certainly this is nothing about you, Regina, but some of us are whiners. And that's just going to be the way it is with God as well. It's just like, God, come on. I've asked you for this new bicycle now for like 5 times. And nobody has given me it yet.
But Maharaj,
yes.
The confusion comes because in the gospel itself, Thakur says, just annoy her. Keep on asking until she throws that at you. At one time he says that very clearly. So
he does. Yeah, he calls it tamasic bhakti. Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's true. It's true. Yeah, it's true. Do I have to concede the point? Maybe. Part of it.
Maybe I have another hard question. I'm sure you guys are all very excited. I'm going to just throw another one into the mix. This hard question is actually about the Mawari devotees question and Thakur's response. I know it depends on the person, but I know a lot of us like to perceive as God as our mother or father or immediate family. And I am not sure how to channel things like lust and anger at a figure who I'm perceiving or trying my best to perceive as like my dad. Like I'm just like, yes, I want to channel those emotions towards God and not towards the world. But it's like, I don't want to be angry at my dad, nor do I want lust to somehow seep outwards instead of being turned inwards. So it's like, and I mean, sometimes those emotions are, it's not like I can ignore them or repress them. God, no, that's the last thing I want to do. It's just like, how do I keep them turning inside instead of towards the outside?
Yeah. This is a great question. I've often wondered that too, because I tried for years to also imagine, well, what's he saying, that I lust for God? What a weird thing. I don't even know what they look like. What it is, as over the years, my ideas on that have changed quite a bit. And currently, my understanding of all of these things is that naturally all love flows toward God. You don't actually love anything but God. And when you look at the nature of lust, what the actual nature of lust is, that the nature of lust is a quest for unity in the finite. That's ultimately what lust is. It's driving you toward union with another person, or an intimacy with another person, a sharing. And so it's a manifestation of the one without a second in the world of multiplicity, which is what all of our vices are. We're trying to manifest our infinite nature in a finite world. And so all desires for objects are because of confusion. They reflect a name of God to us. And we desire that quality of God. We desire that, whether that quality of God is infinite strength, infinite security, infinite love, infinite belonging, infinite life, whatever those qualities of God are, he tucks them into all the objects in the world, and they sparkle with his name, because he's present in and through all of them. And a part of us sees that. And the problem is that the mind and the ego, when they get that information, when they see that, they see it as a separate object. They define it as something separate from you and outside of yourself. And so something manifests as lust. This desire for union gets expressed as lust for a particular. And so it's through discernment, that Thakur tells us that we can come and realize that all of our love that right now we think are going toward a billion different things in the universe at the moment, that we actually through discernment come to realize that all of that desire really is for one thing, and that's for our true nature, for our beloved self, that immortality, that infinity, that security, that bliss, that love, that compassion, that's our longing. That's what we go for. And that's what we manifest. But when it sparkles back to the senses, the ego grabs it and defines it as something separate from the whole, something separate from ourselves, and then wants to go and collect it for itself, to make itself like the true self. It basically wants to become the self, right? Each one of us really wants to become God, but we're trying to do it through the ego, through the objects of the world, and it can't be done that way. And so that discernment, when he says lust for God, is turn it toward the divine, and you turn it toward the divine by realizing the real nature of your lust. One of the things he says to do, and it's quite graphic, but like one time I was walking down the street, I think I've told this story, and I saw this attractive person on the other side of the road. I'd been in the monastery, I don't know, just a few months. And it woke those feelings up inside, that desire. And I looked at it, and I remember what Thakur said, and I just started taking the person apart. I said to my mind, mind, what is it that you want from that person? What is it? Is it a body part? Here's a knife. You can go cut off any part of that body you want. Well, of course, instantly you're like, that's weird. So it's not a body part that you want. It's like, well, you want the whole body. Okay, well, here, let's lay the person down dead on the sidewalk over there and have at it. They're all yours. Well, how do we all feel about a dead body normally? It's like, no, thank you. Don't want to take that home. Got it. No problem. And so then you come to realize through discernment, what is it? It's the divine spark in them that you're attracted to. It's the divine that animates that body, that fills that body with love, that fills that body with compassion, that fills that body with wisdom. That's what you're looking for, but you're confusing it with the body and its parts. And so at first it looks like you want a body part, or you want the body itself. But when you discern and separate the things out, you come to realize what you want is the divine spark within. And that's how we turn our lust toward God, by realizing the nature of what lust really is, that it's a longing for God. It's a longing for that union. It's a longing for that love. It's a longing for that bliss, right? And we've just confused it with a body.
But can you do it with chocolate cake now?
With chocolate cake. Well, chocolate cake doesn't have any redeeming features whatsoever. No, can I do it with chocolate cake? Let's see. Yeah, well, chocolate cake, you would do it in a different way. Thakur would say, go buy all the chocolate cake you can afford, put it in your bedroom, and lock yourself in there until it's all gone. And take notes the entire time. How do you feel after your 8th piece of chocolate cake? How do you feel now that you've finished an entire room full of chocolate cake and it's the next morning? How do you feel the next time you go stand on the scale after eating a room full of chocolate cake? This is what you wanted. This is what you desired. And you come to a very quick understanding. If you're Thakur, when the mind is clear, he only had to do that once. He literally had Thakur fill a room with sweets, and they locked him in there for 24 hours. And he ate as many sweets as he could eat in 24 hours. And he came out and he was like, the nature of sweets is sickness. If you eat them to your heart's content, you will be sick. You will feel ill. That's the nature of sweets. And so he came to know the nature of sweets that way, and then he no longer craved them. Now, we might have to do that several times. Who knows? But yes, it's through discernment. However you do that, take a close look at something. When something attracts you, it's my practice to freeze it in my mind and to walk around it and look at it from different angles and ask myself questions about it. What is it that you think you're going to get from that thing? How long will it last? Have you had it before? If you've had it before, why do you need it again? Did its satisfaction not last? If the satisfaction didn't last, was it enough? If it wasn't enough that time, is it enough this time? You know, and you just ask yourself these questions. Come to sobriety inside, you know, come to clarity on these things. This is what discernment is about. Seeing something for its nature, for what it is, so that you can put it down, right? So that you can let go of it. And the problem, the thing that makes it a little bit more difficult than that for us is that we have this thing called habit behind it. We're in the habit of rewarding ourselves with a chocolate cake, not realizing that it's the cause of our weight gain, that it's the cause of our acne, that it's the cause of our heart disease. That it's all these things. We've convinced ourselves, no, I want that. Yeah. Like a child with a knife on the counter. No, I really want to go play with that. I really do. And you just can't convince him otherwise. It's a matter of habit. And so we have to constantly push against these things, you know, to get rid of them. I mean, you know, the habits, depending on how big that freight train is, how many times have you fallen into this behavior? How rooted into it are you? To that degree, it's going to be that difficult and that much time for you to get out of it. Right. So that is the added element. But the first thing is to discern and to realize what the real nature is. And always remind yourself, go through the whole process every time. You know, I had a very good friend in San Francisco who went on a Weight Watchers program. And, you know, he loved eating pie. And one of his friends didn't know that he was on a diet, that he wasn't eating, and they brought him a whole pie. And he says he had sat on the counter in his kitchen for most of the day. And he said, every time I walked through that kitchen, he said it was like that pie grew another arm to reach out and grab me with. And he says, I ended up, and this was beautiful. I was so proud of him. He says, you know what I did? He says, I took that pie and I threw it upside down in the trash can. And then I took the tin pan off the bottom of it and I poured the coffee grinds from the coffee maker over it from that morning to make sure that I wouldn't go in there, because he had already discerned, he had already started the diet. He had already decided he didn't need or want these things, but it was that habit and that constant reminder of pie. So he brought in the renunciation at that point. So after the discernment comes from renunciation, and renunciation is how we break habit. And that takes some character, because we have to be secure in our renunciation. And how do we get secure in renunciation? By not looking at what we're leaving behind. We have to learn that our renunciation is about what we're going toward. Renunciation is not about what you're leaving. It's what you're going toward. And so if you keep your eyes on all the things you've renounced, you're lost. It's going to be a bad day for you. But if you can keep your eyes on the beautiful things that are inspiring your renunciation, you know, the divine bliss in your meditation, the sweet bliss that you carry through the day with you in the heart, the inner approval of yourself, you know, knowing that you're doing your best, knowing that you are obeying the beloved, knowing that you're getting stronger, and that you're living a life that you've always wanted to live. When you start knowing that those things are the fruit of the Spirit, that those things are that will come to you when you live a life of integrity, as that begins picking up momentum, you know, that's what Thakur says, then you've hoisted your sail, and it's the winds of grace that are carrying you. You know, in the beginning, when we're just sitting there trying to renounce and trying to discern, we're just trying to unfurl the sail, just get it up there enough so that it can catch some grace and carry us out of our mess. So that's how it is. Whatever it is that you like, whatever it is that you're attached to, that you're having troubles with, number one is discernment. Bring your mantra, the presence of God, into your mind with you and talk about it. Set that thing between you and the beloved and have a conversation about it. What do I like in this thing, Mother? Can you reveal to me right now, what is it that I'm longing for that is actually your name? Can you show me that? You know, and look at that and work it out, and then set it down. And maybe with your eyes still on Mother, then renounce it and carry on. That's the way. It takes time, but grace is eternal, right? Mother says that when you put string on a spool, when you want to take that string off the spool, it has to come off in the same order that it goes on, right? So if you've got a lot of bad habits, you might have a big old fat spool of thread. And while the rest of us are in heaven blissfully throwing snowflakes over the clouds, you're going to be down here. Just pulling, sitting on a mountain of thread, just pulling it away, trying to discern, but that's what we have to do. Frankly, all of us that haven't realized God have been at this for a very long time at this point. Thousands of years of people that we know of have been here, and they're gone, and we're still here. So we're the problem children, right? There's there's no born perfects among us. We're the ones having the sweets at dinner, like Thakur says, right? Some of us are even late for dinner, but we carry on because grace is enough, right? And really, we're going to be the ones that know that the best. Those of us who come straggling in that door at the last minute, just barely making it, pooped out, worn out, filthy, dirty, exhausted, crawling into the gates, and then to know that our final ticket was grace anyway. What a great love that will be. What a great thing to know. So, we already did that because I was talking about the master. You are merchants. You know how to improve your business gradually. We said that. And you now and then you go into solitude, devote some time to prayer. But you must remember that nothing can be achieved except in its proper time. This is a pointer at patience. The ego wants to do it effectively and fast and by itself. And the ego will get you feeling like you're impatient. It'll get you impatient with yourself. You'll start calling yourself names inside and whatnot. That's what I was alluding to in my vlog yesterday, when you need to discipline the voice in your head to be respectful when it addresses the divine, which is that self. When you think, you're actually thinking to the divine. It's just the ego that overhears it and thinks you're thinking to it, and it acts. And so the ego wants everything to be done very well and very quickly and precisely, and it wants you to be the one that did it. And this thing here, know that things only happen in their proper time, means don't have a gaining idea. That's what he's trying to tell you. Don't have a gaining idea, and be patient. There's nothing else for you to do but this. You've got this lifetime and the next lifetime. Be steady. Be devoted, but don't have a gaining idea like you're trying to achieve something, because that involves ego and that feeds ego. So it's a matter of patience, of just carefully just going through and doing your duty, doing your part, opening your heart to the beloved, and letting the Lord do his part or her part anytime that he feels like it's time for it. You're of no concern, right? You just go forward. You must remember that nothing can be achieved except in its proper time. Some persons must pass through many experiences and perform many worldly duties before they can turn their attention to God. So they have to wait a long time, right? So this is that notion of how big of a mess you've made, right? And how stubborn you are to learn. This is another big part of it. Some people can read in the scriptures, don't do this, whatever it is. Don't go get drunk. And that's good enough for some people. Some people read it in the scripture, hear it from a holy man. They're like, wow, I like that guy. He's got a good life. I want to be like him. He says, don't drink. I'm not going to drink. So he doesn't do it. And then you got the problem child. What do you mean don't drink? Well, like one glass of a margarita is going to bother me? Like that's going to hurt me? That's going to be nothing. I can do margaritas. Margaritas aren't a problem, and it just goes on and on and on until you're the drunk. And you have to go to the bottom and you have to have lots of experience to learn it yourself because you weren't willing to accept it from the mouth of a person who had tried it and learned. You had to go do it yourself and learn, and that's the idea behind a guru too, mind you. A lot of people, I don't need a guru. I can be my own guru. Well, yeah, your guru, your inner guru has gotten you in this mess. You can sit in this mess and keep listening to it if you want to. Certainly you can. That just means you got a long time ahead of you of suffering, right? But if you can accept the words of a guru who's teaching you outside of your ego and telling you the things that you haven't gotten the clarity to believe yet inside yourself, then you can take a shortcut. You won't have to walk that huge, long path. So that's why the scripture says, get a guru, listen to everything he says as if God is saying it, because that will help break down your ego self. And once that ego self has shut up enough, then you can hear the inner guru. Then you can know what's being said inside. It won't be your yapping senses that are getting your attention anymore. It won't be your discontented mind that was constantly moody, needing something from everything all the time. Finally, that thing has shut up. The ego has shut up. Your desires have shut up. And suddenly in that stillness, oh my God, I'm happy. Why didn't I do this 1,000 years ago? Which begs the question. So you must remember this. All right. So the Mars, gosh, we've almost finished this whole chapter. I turned the page back to find out where that question was coming from. Let's see. So he's talking about the honors. Okay, so we finished that chapter. So, but he ends it there. The same Rama who is the son of King Dasharatha has created this world. Again, a spirit, he pervades all beings. He is very near to us. He is both within and without. And this is when I hear this saying about the beloved, that he's everywhere, he's inside and outside. There's not a lot of ways to really bring that home, to have that touch you in a real way, because one, you don't believe it. Two, you can't see it. So I always think about the idea of a dream. In that dream, what are you looking at? You're not using your eyes. You're not looking at anything in the outside world. So what are you looking at? You're looking at your own mind. And so what is creating the ocean? What is creating the people? What is creating the buildings? What's creating the story in the dream? It's all a singular substance called mind, right? It's all a singular substance. It's called mind. And that mind pervades all of it because it is all of it. There is nothing else there but mind. That's all you're seeing. There's no light in there. So how are you seeing even anything? Your own light of consciousness is showing you everything in a dream. So you can sit, and it's wonderful to think about that. Come to an understanding of what that means in the dream, of how pervasive mind is, how it really has become everything that you're experiencing in that dream, that there's no space, there's no light, there's no darkness, there's nothing in there. There's only mind, and it's giving you a whole universe. Think of how intimate God is with you. If that's the reality of this world, that God is that mind stuff, that is this entire world. There is no air between you. There's no space between you and anything else. Just like in your dream, those two mountains that are 150 miles apart are really no farther than from this year to this year. And yet they look like 150 miles. God is that close with you. Everything about you is divine. Everything, He's the most private part of your body. He knows it intimately. He's the most private section of your mind. She knows it infinitely, intimately. There is no difference. So why hide? Why feel afraid? Why feel ashamed? It is the Lord himself, and to come to know that, to be allowed to know that, is grace. And in that knowing is our freedom, because it allows us to not be ruled by a misrepresentation of God in things, right? We finally realize the one thing that we're looking for. And we realize that it was the beloved. And we realize that it was everything that we ever saw, ever heard, tasted, smelled, and beyond. So this, wow, it's 8:06, goodness. So that's our chapter for the night. Now we'll do chapter 7 next week. the master and Vijay Goswami.